When Sophia met the love of her life, Bobel, he seemed like a good man. Their relationship was perfect in the beginning, and to the outside world, they seemed like a loving couple. But when Bobel became controlling and violent, Sophia wanted to leave him. On the 10th of February 2013, Sophia suddenly fell 13 meters down from the couple's balcony. Her husband Bobel called the emergency services, saying that Sophia jumped. But when Sophia woke up from her coma 3 months later, she told another story, and when Bobel was going to be arrested, he had mysteriously disappeared. Was the fall from the balcony an attempt to commit suicide or an attempted murder? This is what the Swedish media calls the balcony case. So hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Elin and on this channel I cover true crime cases that have occurred in the Nordic countries. Some content warnings before we start this video. This video will include talks about suicide, domestic violence, and abuse towards women. So if that's something that you don't want to watch, then I suggest you click out of this video right now. If you like my channel, please subscribe, and now let's get into a case that happened in Sweden. So the main person in this case is called Sophia, and Sophia is not really her real name, but she has protected identity and that's what the media has called her, so I'm gonna be using the name Sophia in this video. Her mom describes Sophia as wonderful and helpful, and her brother describes her as a strong woman who is not easily manipulated. She's also described as a very positive person who kept a positive view in life even through hard times. In 2002, Sophia met a man called Bobel Barquasho. He was described as a pretty normal but very religious man. Bobel was very innocent looking and seemed to the outside world like the perfect family father. He was also described as very manipulative, and most people saw him as very charming. Sophia's brother describes there being no signs of what was about to happen, as Bobel seemed kind, loving, and the couple did not even fight a lot. 7 years after meeting, Sophia and Bobel got married and everything seemed normal in the beginning. A week after the wedding, the couple bought an apartment in Södertälje in Sweden. To the outside world, everything seemed good between them and the couple was described as loving towards each other. After a while, Sophia began to notice her husband's need for control. Little by little, he became more suspicious towards Sophia and was sometimes even violent towards her. He used to say that if I don't get you, then nobody gets you. Sophia wanted to leave the relationship and she never thought that he would actually try to kill her. Bobel, on the other hand, did not see divorce as an alternative, and on the night of February the 10th, 2013, everything was turned upside down. On the 10th of February 2013, Bobel Barquasho called 112, which is the Swedish emergency number. He said that his wife Sophia jumped from the 6th floor balcony and asked them to hurry. He sounded frantic in this call as he was screaming and crying. She sounds strange and bones are sticking out, the arm, he said in the conversation. He also claimed that he was too scared to touch her. The emergency services on their way there straight away had a gut feeling that something was up as nobody just falls from the balcony. Sophia had fallen 13 meters and the rail on the balcony was so high, so straight from the start it was clear that either she jumped or someone pushed her. When the emergency services arrived, they were surprised to see that Sophia was still alive, but she was also hurt very badly. There was blood everywhere and her arms, legs, jaw, and chest were all broken. She also had a big hole in her head and was bleeding a lot from that wound. During all of this, her husband Bobel was just standing in the staircase inside of the house. So the police knew straight away that there was something strange about Bobel. At the crime scene, the police saw that Bobel had marks on his hands and arms and even in the face, as well as blood on his white shirt. Bobel described the injuries as being a result of hitting a tree after they got into a fight. Bobel described them having a fight that night and repeatedly said that it's his fault that Sophia jumped. Bobel was arrested at the crime scene and he was brought in for questioning. He seemed very depressed, so the police drove him to the psychiatric clinic and spent the night there with him. He never asked how Sophia was feeling, which was something that the police noted. According to Bobel, he never once put his hands on Sophia. Meanwhile, Sophia was having surgery to save her life. The doctors described Sophia as crushed in pieces, and it looked like there was no hope for her to survive. In the beginning, there was no clear motive, as the couple was described by everyone as being a loving couple. They did a reconstruction of the night of the crime, and Bobel said that their fight started because he gave a training shirt to her cousin who was visiting them. Basically, he had been cleaning his closet and he had given one of his shirts to one of Sophia's cousins, who was a teenage girl. Sophia had gotten upset as she felt like he had been flirting with this girl. This had escalated and led to a physical altercation. According to Bobel, Sophia had first smacked him and then tried to kick him. He had never been violent towards Sophia in his own opinion, even if Sophia had been violent to him. Bobel said that he then left with his car from the apartment, went to just hit a wall, and then came back to the apartment. The fight continued, and he asked if they should maybe separate. Sophia had then been screaming at him that he wanted to be intimate with her cousin, and then he had told her to shut up and went into the bedroom. He then heard the balcony door open and saw her jumping off the balcony. So when the police went into the apartment to investigate, they found some suspicious things. There were many footprints on the balcony, even with socks on in the snow. They also found a drop of blood on the balcony that was straight outside of the door. When using a chemical called Blue Star to see if there had been anything cleaned up in the apartment, it showed that there had been blood on the floor, but it had been cleaned up. When Bobel was confronted with this, he claimed that Sophia had had a nosebleed. It was, however, impossible to bleed a nosebleed and get that kind of blood on the floor. After 30 days in jail, Bobel was released since they could not keep him without hearing Sophia. They did, however, secretly listen to his phone calls and his room, but they got no evidence from that. For 3 months, Sophia was in a coma and she had wounds all over her body, so every day was a fight for survival. One day, her brother sat by her side in the hospital when he suddenly felt her hand moving. So he told Sophia that if you can hear me, blink 2 times, and Sophia blinked. She was a tough girl and she had not given up. Sophia was alive, which was a miracle. So the police could finally question Sophia, and at first she could not remember anything. Her family wanted to know the truth and everyone were careful not to give her any false memories. Sophia described it as a normal day, just like any other, and then they got their relatives for a visit. They then started to fight, and Sophia asked Bobel to leave the apartment. After that, everything was black, but she remembers feeling pain, rotating, and then feeling cold. Sophia eventually started remembering more and more, but not the full story of that night. One thing she was sure of was that she was not suicidal and would never try to commit suicide. So the trial against Bobel started in 2014. Family members talked about Bobel's hot temper and his big need for control. No one in Sophia's surrounding, apart from Bobel, described Sophia as suicidal, and like I said before, Sophia herself claims that she has never been suicidal and has always been a very positive person. One theory was that Bobel had been abusing Sophia that night during their fight, and then she might have passed out and he then panicked and threw her off the balcony. There was a lot of technical evidence against Bobel, especially Sofia's blood in the apartment and on his clothes, because why would that be there if she just tried to end her life by jumping off the balcony? The court ruled that after years of control and jealousy, Bobel Barquasho threw Sofia off her balcony. She fell 13 meters and her whole body was literally crushed. Almost every bone in her body was broken and she suffered serious head injuries. So, on the 22nd of April 2014, Bobel Barquasho was sentenced to 9 years in prison by the district court for attempted murder but was released when the case went to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal was of the opinion that it cannot be ruled out that Sophia herself jumped, as her husband said. Even if Sophia was trustworthy, Sophia's memories just simply could not be trusted. It was more about proving that Bobel did the crime, which there was not enough evidence for according to the Court of Appeal. So in 2014, Bobel was released and was from that point forward a free man. There was a big risk towards Sophia and her family's safety, and the risk that he would attempt to finish what he had started, which was obviously to kill Sophia, was deemed so high that Sophia and her family were given protected identities and moved away. Her parents had to give up their jobs and they were scared to go out. Nothing was the same as it used to be. Sophia herself describes it like this. We couldn't spend time with relatives and friends. My son couldn't invite friends home and we had to live very isolated while my abuser was released. It felt so unfair. But Sophia and her family refused to accept this verdict. With the help of her lawyer and a retired police officer, Sophia continued to fight for justice. In 2015, Sophia's case reached the Supreme Court, which very few cases do in Sweden. Now they used analyses that Sophia's family had to attend and pay for themselves. This time they also had more evidence against Bobel, for example the fact that Bobel only stayed on the emergency call for a couple of minutes before going back up to the apartment, giving him the perfect opportunity to clean up the blood in the apartment. It was also proven that it takes a certain amount of strength for Sophia to lay 2 meters away from the wall of the house after she fell, which is almost impossible for most people to do by themselves. There was also a witness who had previously been scared to come forward and who even moved away from the area afterwards, who claimed that he had heard screaming from the apartment that night and also seen Bobel when calling 112. This man was therefore able to contradict some things that Bobel had said during the emergency call. From the crime scene and technical evidence, it seemed like Sophia had been a victim of violence in the living room and she then tried to go into the bathroom, possibly to hide. There it seems like the violence had continued and Sophia moved into the kitchen and from there out to the balcony. The Supreme Court's verdict came in November of 2015 and Sophia was lifted up from her wheelchair to be able to stand up when the verdict was read. 5 judges agreed and Bobel was sentenced to 14 years in prison for attempted murder, which was the highest sentence for attempted murder during that time. The Court of Appeal's sentence was changed and Sophia's case became legal history. But when Bobel was going to be arrested the day before the verdict was announced, he had mysteriously disappeared. So Bobel Barquasho was not anymore in Sweden and was therefore wanted internationally. He was in Turkey, but because he had Turkish citizenship, Turkey initially refused to extradite him. Sophia's family was heartbroken that he was able to live a normal life somewhere else without serving his sentence. In March of 2021, a Turkish court finally decided that Bobel was gonna serve his sentence in a Turkish prison. After this, the news that Sophia and her family had been waiting for came. The Turkish police had arrested Bobel. He had in Turkey been working in a hotel and used the name Robert, and he was well liked there. On the 3rd of June 2022, the Turkish authorities announced that Bobel Barquasho had been arrested after many years on the run. He is now serving his 14-year sentence in a Turkish prison. And I quote from Sophia now: "We always have Friday coziness with popcorn and fries. That day my son said, 'I know it's not evening yet, but can't we celebrate now?' I cried out for joy myself." But despite the fact that Bobel has now been arrested, Sophia and her family's life in secret doesn't look like it's ending yet. Over the years, just a few months ago, Sophia and her family have been told that they are still wanted by people with ties to her ex-husband. Sophia thinks that he's not going to give up before he finished what he started, and that was basically to make sure that she will someday be dead. Today, 10 years have passed since Sophia almost lost her life. She now has to live with the physical injuries. She had to amputate her right arm, her left arm is paralyzed, and she doesn't have much vision. But her brain did incredibly well recovering, so at least that's something positive about the situation. And the last quote from Sophia before wrapping up this video is this: "I've always been happy, and I believe that most beautiful things come from within. These things he could not take away from me, no matter how hard he tried," which is just very inspirational in my opinion. So personally, I think it's pretty clear what happened in this case, and it's very normal for abusers to try to turn it onto the victim, which is exactly what Bobel did. What probably scares me the most about Bobel is the fact that he literally had his whole surrounding tricked, and everyone thought that he was this perfect family man who would never do something like this. But that's all that I have for this case today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that I will see you in my next case. Goodbye, everyone.